I'm Lydia, 33 years old, and I built my husband's entire tech empire with my own hands. We were supposed to be partners. I wrote every line of code while he closed the deals. We built a company worth $8 million from nothing. But then he fired me through an email just like that to make room for his mistress as the new CTO. What he didn't know was that I had left something behind in my code, a tiny piece of insurance. And in 72 hours, it brought his entire world crashing down. Before I tell you how it all went down, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. If you've ever been underestimated by someone you trusted, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story proves that karma has perfect timing. Let me take you back to where this all started 5 years ago in San Francisco. I met Derek at a startup conference. He was 36 at the time, charming, confident, the kind of guy who could sell ice to someone living in Alaska. I was a senior software engineer at a fintech company, comfortable in my role, but hungry for something more. Derek had this energy about him, this vision. He cornered me after a panel discussion about emerging technologies. We got coffee, and he pitched me his idea. A platform to help small and medium businesses manage their inventory in real time. Nothing revolutionary, but he saw the gap in the market. These businesses were still using spreadsheets or clunky old software from the 90s. They needed something modern, intuitive, affordable. I listened to him talk for 2 hours, watching his hands move as he painted this picture of what we could build together. Here's the thing about Derek. He understood people. He knew what they wanted before they knew it themselves. But technology? That was completely foreign to him. He couldn't write a single line of code if his life depended on it. That's where I came in. I told him I could build what he was describing. Not just build it, but make it better than anything else on the market. 6 months later, we were married. It happened fast. Maybe too fast, but it felt right at the time. We were both all in, not just on each other, but on this dream we were building together. We filed the paperwork for TechFlow Solutions in my living room, our wedding ring still shiny and new. That first year I barely slept. I'm talking 16-hour days every single day. I built the entire back end from scratch. The database architecture, the API integrations, the user interface, all of it. Derek focused on the business side. He networked, pitched to potential clients, handled the marketing. We were a team, or at least that's what I believed. The platform launched 10 months after we started. Our first client was a retail chain in Texas with 12 locations. They were drowning in inventory problems, overstocking some items, running out of others, losing money because they couldn't see the big picture. Our system changed that for them. Within 3 months, they reduced their inventory costs by 20%. Word spread. A medical equipment distributor in Florida signed on, then a furniture wholesaler in California. By the end of our first full year, we had reached $2 million in revenue. Derek became the CEO naturally. He was the face of the company, the one doing the pitches and the handshakes. I became the CTO, the one making sure everything actually worked. We hired 5 developers to help manage the growing workload, but I was still the one who understood the entire system. Every module, every integration, every line of code could be traced back to my keyboard. I had built something complex and beautiful. The core system managed inventory in real time, syncing across multiple locations instantly. The payment integration worked seamlessly with all the major processors. The analytics dashboard gave our clients insights they never had before. But the most important piece, the thing that held everything together, was the authentication system. I had designed it from the ground up, custom built instead of using off-the-shelf solutions. It was more secure, more flexible, and it ran through servers that I personally managed. I was the only one with master access to the back-end infrastructure. Derek didn't understand any of it, and honestly, he didn't need to. His job was to sell what I built. He used to joke about it. "You're the genius, honey. I just sell what you build." He would say it with this proud smile like he was lucky to have me. And I felt lucky too. We were building something together, building a life. By year 3, we hit $5 million in revenue. We bought a beautiful house in the suburbs of Seattle, one of those places with big windows and a view of the mountains. Derek started getting invited to speak at conferences. Tech publications wrote articles about TechFlow's rapid growth. Investors started circling. I was happy to stay in the background. I didn't need the spotlight or the recognition. I had my work, and I had Derek, and I thought that was enough. People assumed Derek was the mastermind behind TechFlow. They would ask him technical questions at events, and he would deflect smoothly. "You'll have to ask my brilliant wife about that. She's the one who makes the magic happen." But then he would forget to mention me in his keynote speeches. Or he would accept awards for innovation without bringing me on stage. Small things at first. Things I told myself didn't matter. We were a team. That's all that mattered. I remember one Sunday morning we were having breakfast on our back deck. The sun was coming through the trees and everything felt perfect. I brought up the idea of starting a family. Derek smiled and said, "Soon. Let's get the company to 10 million first, then we can think about kids." I agreed. It made sense to wait until things were more stable. I trusted him completely. He was my husband, my partner, my best friend. Or so I thought. The first crack appeared in September of that year. Derek came home one evening and announced he was hiring an executive assistant. "Business is growing too fast," he explained. "I need help managing my schedule, coordinating with clients, keeping everything organized." It made sense. He was traveling more, taking more meetings, and I could see the stress building. "That's a good idea," I told him. "You need the support." 2 weeks later, he introduced Amber Stevens to the team. She was 27, blonde, attractive in that polished way that looks effortless, but probably takes an hour each morning. Her resume was decent. She had worked as an executive assistant at another startup for 2 years. Nothing spectacular, but solid experience. What struck me during that first meeting was how Derek looked at her. His eyes lingered just a second too long when she smiled. He laughed a little too hard at something she said that wasn't particularly funny. I noticed, but I pushed the thought away. I was being paranoid. Derek loved me. We were building this company together. Amber dove into her role with enthusiasm. She was always at the office early, staying late. I would hear her voice drifting from Derek's office, that high musical laugh punctuating their conversations. The door was often closed. When I asked Derek about it once, he said, "We're just planning the investor roadshow. Lots of details to coordinate." Things started changing between Derek and me around that time. Subtle shifts that I didn't want to acknowledge. He began coming home later and later. Client dinner, he would text, or investor meeting running long, or conference call with East Coast partners. Our conversations grew shorter. Before Derek would ask about my day, about the features I was developing, about challenges the dev team was facing. He was genuinely interested, or at least he pretended to be. Now when I tried to talk about work, he would zone out scrolling through his phone. "I'm sure you're handling it," he would say absently. I tried to initiate intimacy one night. We hadn't been together in nearly 3 weeks, which was unusual for us. Derek turned away. "I'm exhausted, babe. Running a company is stressful. You understand, right?" I understood stress. I was stressed too, managing an entire technical infrastructure, but I didn't say that. I just rolled over and stared at the ceiling in the dark. The real warning signs started in October. Derek and his sister Linda had always been close, but suddenly they were having private conversations all the time. Then Travis, Derek's brother, started calling more frequently. They would talk in hushed tones, and when I entered the room, they would change the subject or end the call quickly. One afternoon, I walked past Derek's office and heard him talking to someone about money. "We need to start thinking about asset protection," he was saying. I paused outside the door, my hand on the frame. "The company is growing, and we need to make sure everything is structured properly." I knocked and opened the door. Derek was on the phone, and he quickly said, "I'll call you back," before hanging up. "Everything okay?" I asked. He smiled that easy smile. "Just boring financial stuff. Nothing you need to worry about." But I was starting to worry. The pieces didn't quite fit together. Why was he suddenly concerned about asset protection? Why were all these private conversations happening without me? Then Amber started showing up in places she had no business being. Technical meetings with the development team, for instance. Derek brought her to a code review session one Thursday morning. "Amber will be sitting in to take notes," he announced. I looked at him confused. "This is a developers meeting. We're reviewing the new API documentation. She needs to understand all aspects of the business," Derek said firmly in a tone that suggested the discussion was over. Amber sat there with her laptop asking basic questions that showed she understood nothing about what we were discussing. "So the database stores all the inventory data?" she asked at one point. "Yes, that's literally what a database does. How does the API actually work?" "It works by doing exactly what APIs do." I answered her questions patiently, assuming she was just trying to learn. But after the meeting, Derek pulled me aside. "Can you create some documentation about the system for Amber?" he asked. "Detailed documentation explaining how everything works." "Why does she need that?" I asked. "She's helping me understand the technical side better for investor pitches," he said. But Derek had never cared about understanding the technical side before. Why, now I created the documentation because he asked. I spent hours writing it out, explaining our architecture, our security protocols, how each module connected to the others. I gave it to Amber the following Monday. She barely glanced at it. "Thanks," she said with a tight smile. "This will be really useful." The breaking point came on a Tuesday night in late October. I had forgotten my laptop at the office and drove back around 9 to pick it up. The parking lot was nearly empty, but I saw Derek's car and one other. When I walked into the building, I noticed light coming from Derek's office. I was about to walk in and say hello when I heard Amber's voice. "You promised you'd handle this soon." Her tone was demanding, intimate in a way that made my stomach drop. Derek responded, I know. I just need to time it right." "I can't keep being just an assistant, Derek," Amber said. There was a long pause, and then I heard it. The unmistakable sound of kissing. I stood frozen in the hallway. My heart was pounding so hard I thought they might hear it. Everything suddenly made sense. The late nights, the closed-door meetings, the way he looked at her. I backed away quietly, grabbed my laptop from my desk, and drove home in a daze. When Derek came home at 11, acting like everything was normal, I wanted to confront him. But something stopped me. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was the part of me that still didn't want to believe it. "How was your day?" I asked, testing him. "Busy as usual," he said casually, kissing my forehead before heading to the shower. He was lying to my face, and he was good at it. The next morning, I went into the office early. I needed to know the truth, needed to see the full picture of what was happening. I started where any good engineer starts when investigating a problem. I looked at the data. I pulled up the company calendar system which I had built and maintained. Derek and Amber had dozens of meetings scheduled together. Private meetings no other attendees listed. Some lasted 3 or 4 hours. Strategy sessions? They were labeled. At times when I knew Derek had told me he was meeting with clients. I accessed the security camera logs. I had set up the entire system 2 years ago, so I still had administrative access. I pulled the footage from the past month and started going through it methodically. What I saw made me feel sick. Derek and Amber leaving the office together multiple times, getting into his car, driving away in the middle of the afternoon. One clip showed them returning at 5:30, Amber adjusting her clothes, Derek straightening his tie. They weren't even trying to be subtle anymore. Or maybe they just thought I was too buried in code to notice. I dug deeper. I accessed the company credit card statements, something I rarely looked at since Derek handled most of the finances. There were charges that didn't make sense. Embassy suites downtown multiple times. 2-hour blocks in the middle of weekdays. The restaurant on the ground floor matching timestamps. They were having lunch, then going upstairs. I found 8 separate charges over the past 2 months. 8 times my husband had taken his assistant to a hotel in the middle of the workday. The rage that washed over me was unlike anything I had ever felt. I wanted to scream, to throw my laptop across the room, to march into his office and expose him in front of everyone. But I didn't. I saved everything. Downloaded the security footage, copied the credit card statements, took screenshots of the calendar. I created a folder on my personal encrypted drive and labeled it Evidence. Because some part of me, the engineer part that thinks in systems and logic, knew I might need this. That night I confronted him. Derek was in the living room watching a basketball game. I sat down next to him and turned off the TV. "Are you having an affair with Amber?" I asked directly. His face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Shock, then calculation, then something that looked almost like annoyance. "What? Where is this coming from?" he asked, but his voice was too controlled, too rehearsed. "I heard you in your office last week," I said. "I heard you kissing her." Derek sighed like I was being unreasonable. "Lydia, you're being paranoid. Amber is just an assistant. We work closely together, that's all." The gaslighting was so smooth, so practiced. "You heard wrong," he continued. "Maybe it was someone else's office. Maybe you were tired and imagined it." "I know what I heard," I said. "This is exactly the problem," he said, his voice taking on an edge. "You're so isolated in your tech bubble that you're imagining things. You need to trust me." But I didn't trust him. Not anymore. Still, I didn't mention the credit card statements or the security footage. Something told me to hold that information close. I just watched him, this man I had married, this man I had built an empire with, and I saw him clearly for the first time. He was a liar, and he was getting ready to do something worse. Over the next week, Amber's behavior toward me changed. She became bolder, almost mocking. During a team meeting, I was explaining a technical issue we were having with the payment gateway. Amber interrupted me. "Can you simplify that? Not everyone speaks nerd." The room went silent. Several developers looked uncomfortable. I looked at Derek, waiting for him to say something to defend me. He said nothing, just looked down at his notes like he hadn't heard. That's when I knew for certain. He was choosing her over me. After that meeting, I went to get coffee from the break room. I saw Derek and Amber standing near the windows, talking in low voices. When Amber noticed me watching, she smiled. Then she placed her hand on Derek's shoulder, letting it linger there, her fingers curling slightly against his jacket. It was a gesture of ownership. Derek glanced at me, and I saw something in his eyes. Guilt, maybe. Or just discomfort at being caught. But he didn't step away from her touch. He just looked back at Amber and continued their conversation. James. One of my senior developers pulled me aside later that afternoon. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. "Everyone can see what's happening. It's not right." I appreciated his concern, but it also made me realize how obvious this had become. The entire office knew my husband was having an affair with his assistant. I was the last one to fully accept it. That evening, I did something I wasn't proud of but felt necessary. Derek and I shared certain accounts for business purposes, email accounts that we both had access to systems that required joint administration. I logged into one of those shared spaces and found something that confirmed my worst fears. An email from a headhunter. "Per your request, here are candidates for the CTO position." I clicked through the attached resumes. 5 people, all with impressive credentials, all potential replacements for me. My hands shook as I scrolled through more emails. Messages to our company lawyer. Need to discuss restructuring company ownership. Messages to our accountant. How do we handle equity buyout for a co-founder? Derek was planning to force me out of the company I had built from nothing. And then I found the email that broke something inside me. A message from Derek to Amber. "Just need a few more weeks, then you'll have the position you deserve." Amber's response made me want to throw up. I can't wait to finally get credit for my ideas. Her ideas. What ideas? Amber had contributed nothing to this company except sleeping with my husband. But Derek was going to give her my position, my title, my work, everything I had created. I sat in my home office that night staring at lines of code on my screen, the code that powered TechFlow, the code that I had written every function, every module, every integration. Derek thought he owned this company. He thought he could just push me out and continue profiting from my work. He had no idea how wrong he was. I opened a new terminal window and started typing. If Derek wanted to play games, I would show him what a real engineer could do. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked in secret. On the surface, everything appeared normal. I went to meetings, managed the dev team, responded to Derek's requests. But at night in my home office, I was building something else. Something Derek would never see coming. I had built TechFlow's authentication system from scratch. It was elegant, secure, and entirely mine. Every user login, every API call, every data transaction went through protocols I had designed. And buried deep in that code, I was now creating what programmers call a kill switch, a failsafe, my insurance policy. The concept was simple, but the execution was complex. I wrote a script that would gradually corrupt authentication tokens across the entire system. Not all at once, that would be too obvious. But slowly, systematically, it would cause cascading failures. Users wouldn't be able to log in. API calls would start returning errors. The whole platform would become unusable. But here's the clever part. The code was designed to look like a natural system failure, something that could happen with any complex software. No one would suspect sabotage. They would just think the system was broken. And only I would know how to fix it, because only I understood the exact nature of what I had done. I tested it thoroughly in a development environment that I controlled, one that wasn't connected to our production servers. It worked perfectly. The degradation would take 72 hours once triggered, 3 days for everything to fall apart. I buried the code deep in the authentication module disguised as part of the normal security protocols. Even if another engineer looked at it, they wouldn't recognize what it actually did. It was hidden in plain sight, camouflaged among thousands of lines of legitimate code. The trigger mechanism was elegant. It was tied to my administrative access. As long as my credentials remained active in the system, the kill switch stayed dormant. But the moment my access was revoked, the moment Derek fired me and removed my permissions, the countdown would begin automatically. I also took other precautions. I backed up everything. Company data client records, all of it went onto encrypted drives that only I could access. I saved every email, every document, every piece of evidence that proved I had built this company. Design documents with my notes, architecture diagrams with my handwriting Git commits showing my authorship of the entire codebase. I knew what was coming. I could feel it. Derek was getting ready to make his move, and I needed to be ready too. The axe fell on a Friday morning in November. I woke up, made coffee, and opened my email before heading to the office. There it was. Subject line, company restructuring. From Derek's official CEO email address. Dear Lydia, after careful consideration, we have decided to restructure the technical leadership team. Effective immediately, your position as CTO is terminated. We appreciate your contributions to TechFlow Solutions. HR will contact you regarding final compensation and equity settlement. Please return all company property by end of business today. Best regards, Derek Harrison, CEO. I read it 3 times, not because I didn't understand it, but because I couldn't believe the coldness of it. 5 years of marriage, 5 years of building something together. And this is how it ended. An email, not even a phone call, not even the courtesy of a face-to-face conversation. My phone buzzed. A text from James. Did you see the announcement? What announcement? I checked my work email. There was a message sent to the entire company 15 minutes after Derek fired me. We are pleased to announce that Amber Stevens will be joining our executive team as Chief Technology Officer. Amber brings fresh perspective and innovative ideas that will drive TechFlow forward. I actually laughed when I read that. A bitter, painful laugh. Fresh perspective. Amber couldn't write a single line of code. Innovative ideas. Her biggest contribution to the company was figuring out how to sleep with the boss. But sure, she was going to be the new CTO. I got dressed and drove to the office one last time. I needed to pack up my things per Derek's instructions. When I walked in, the atmosphere was tense. People wouldn't make eye contact. They knew this was wrong, but what could they do? Derek was the CEO. He signed their paychecks. The developers came to see me one by one as I packed my belongings. James had tears in his eyes. This is completely unfair, he said. Everyone knows you built everything. It's okay, I told him, even though it wasn't. I'll be fine. Sarah, another senior developer, hugged me. We all know what you did for this company. We know the truth. I packed slowly, deliberately. My personal laptop, a few photos, some books. I left behind everything that belonged to the company. I didn't need any of it. What I needed was already secured in places Derek couldn't access. As I walked out carrying my small box of belongings, I passed Derek's office. The door was open. Amber was sitting at what used to be my desk, the one in the CTO office. Derek stood next to her, his hand on her shoulder. They were looking at something on the computer screen, laughing about something. They didn't look up as I walked past. They didn't acknowledge my existence. 5 years of my life, and I was invisible to them now. I kept walking out through the lobby, into the parking lot, into my car. I sat there for a moment, key in the ignition, looking back at the building. Then I pulled out my phone and opened a secure terminal app I had installed. I logged into the back-end system through a backdoor account I had created years ago, an account that existed nowhere in any official documentation, an account that only I knew about. I navigated to the authentication module, found the kill switch code I had planted, and activated the timer. 72 hours. In 3 days, Derek's world would start crumbling, and there was nothing he could do to stop it because he didn't even know it was coming. That night my phone rang. Derek. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Hello? I hope you understand this is just business, he said. His voice was cold, detached. Business, I repeated. We're married, Derek. About that, he said, and I could hear him taking a breath. I think we should separate. This isn't working anymore. My lawyer will send you divorce papers next week. So that was it. He was divorcing me too. Taking everything. The company, the life we built, all of it. And giving it to Amber. You built it for the company, he continued. The company that I lead. You'll get fair compensation for your equity. My lawyer will make sure everything is handled properly. Fair compensation. For building an $8 million company from scratch. For 5 years of my life. For trusting him when I should have protected myself. You're right, Derek, I said calmly. You always said you know business better than me. I guess I'll just have to accept that. He sounded relieved. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. I was worried you might make things difficult. After I hung up, I looked at my laptop screen. The timer was counting down. 69 hours and 42 minutes remaining. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Derek had no idea what reasonable actually looked like. The first sign of trouble came on Monday morning, 72 hours after I activated the kill switch. I was sitting at home drinking coffee and reading a book when my phone buzzed. A text from James. System is acting weird. Clients are complaining about login issues. I didn't respond. Let them figure it out. An hour later, my phone started ringing. Derek calling. I ignored it. He called again. And again. 5 times in 30 minutes. Then a text. We're having technical issues. Need you to come back temporarily. I typed out a response. I'm no longer employed there. Contact your new CTO. His reply came immediately. This is serious. Clients can't access the platform. We're losing money. I smiled at my phone screen. I'm sure Amber, with her innovative ideas, can figure it out. The messages kept coming. Lydia, please. This isn't a joke. People are threatening to sue. The board is asking questions. I turned off my phone and went for a walk. The November air was crisp and cold, clearing my head. I thought about everything that had happened, everything I had lost. But mostly, I thought about what Derek was losing right now. James told me later what was happening inside TechFlow that day. Pure chaos. Developers were frantically trying to debug the authentication issues, but they couldn't find the source of the problem. The error logs showed nothing unusual, just generic failure messages. It looked like a random system glitch, which was exactly what I had designed it to look like. Amber, the new CTO who couldn't code her way out of a paper bag, was completely lost. She called an emergency meeting with the dev team. Just reboot everything, she apparently suggested. The developers stared at her. You can't just reboot a complex distributed system serving hundreds of clients. That's not how any of this works. They brought in an outside consultant, someone who charged $500 an hour. He spent 6 hours looking at the code and told them the same thing the internal team already knew. The authentication system is failing, but I can't determine why. The code base is extremely complex. I would need weeks to fully understand it. Weeks? They didn't have weeks. By Monday evening, 30 clients were affected. By Tuesday morning, that number had doubled. Client emails and phone calls were flooding in. We can't access our inventory data. Our employees are locked out. We're losing sales because we can't process orders. Derek called me 15 times on Tuesday. I didn't answer any of them. He left voicemails, his voice getting progressively more desperate. Lydia, please pick up. Whatever you want, we can negotiate. I'm begging you. I listened to each voicemail once, then deleted it. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, just a cold emptiness where my love for him used to be. Tuesday afternoon, TechFlow's value started dropping. They had just secured Series A funding 3 months earlier, bringing in angel investors who now owned 20% of the company. Those investors were panicking. If the platform didn't work, their investment was worthless. One investor sent an email to Derek that was CC'd to the entire board. "This is unacceptable. We invested based on the technical excellence of your platform. If you can't maintain basic functionality, we may need to reconsider our position." The tech blogs picked up the story. TechFlow Solutions faces major outage. Inventory management platform down for second day. The comments section was brutal. Competitors gleefully pointed out that this was what happened when you prioritized growth over stability. Former clients shared their frustration. Derek posted a statement on the company blog. "We are experiencing temporary technical difficulties. Our team is working around the clock to resolve these issues. We apologize for the inconvenience." The comments on that post were even worse. "Temporary. It's been 2 days. This is costing us thousands of dollars. We trusted you with our business data, and you can't even keep your system running." Wednesday morning, the situation reached critical mass. Over 100 clients were now affected. The cascading failures I had programmed were working exactly as designed. It wasn't just authentication anymore. API calls were timing out. Database connections were becoming unstable. The whole system was degrading. Derek was desperate now. He posted on LinkedIn with a public plea, seeking urgent consultation from experienced CTOs, technical emergency, competitive compensation. The comments on that post told the story. "Did you fire your CTO? Karma. This is what happens when you undervalue your technical team." The company's valuation, which had reached $8 million after the funding round, dropped to $5 million, then $4.5 million. Investors were threatening to pull their funding entirely. Client contracts were being canceled left and right. 3 major clients worth a combined $1.2 million in annual recurring revenue sent termination notices. Wednesday evening, Derek sent me an email. The subject line was, "I'm begging you." I opened it. "Lydia, I made a terrible mistake. I know that now. Please help us fix this system. I'll give you whatever you want. Name your price. We can work something out, please." I sat looking at that email for a long time. Part of me, a very small part, felt bad. But then I remembered the hotel charges, the lies, the gaslighting, the way he fired me over email and installed his mistress in my place, the way he was going to divorce me and take everything I had built. I clicked reply. "I'm willing to consult on this issue. My rate is $5,000 per hour, plus I want my full equity stake returned, and a public apology acknowledging that I built this company's entire technical infrastructure. Let me know if those terms are acceptable." Derek's response came within 2 minutes. "Deal. When can you start?" I closed my laptop. "I'll think about it." I typed back. Then I went to bed and slept better than I had in months. Thursday morning, I woke up to 47 missed calls and 32 text messages, all from Derek, all increasingly frantic. The latest one simply said, "Please." I made myself breakfast, took a shower, and got dressed like I was going to a business meeting. Because in a way, I was. I was about to negotiate the terms of my return, and I was going to make sure I got everything I deserved. Around noon, I finally responded to Derek. "I'll come to the office at 2. Have your lawyer there. We're going to formalize some things before I fix anything. At exactly 2 o'clock, I walked into TechFlow's conference room. Derek was there looking like he hadn't slept in days. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie loose, his face unshaven. Sitting next to him was his lawyer, an older man in an expensive suit. And of course, Amber was there too. She looked nervous, her confident smirk from last week completely gone. I sat down across from them, placed my laptop on the table, and folded my hands. "So," I said calmly, "you need my help." Derek leaned forward. "The system is completely down now. We've lost over $2 million in contracts this week. Investors are threatening to pull out completely. We need you to fix this, please." "I can fix it in 10 minutes, I said. Derek's eyes widened. 10 minutes? We've had people working on this for 3 days. Those people didn't build the system, I said. I did. Every line of code, every protocol, every fail-safe. I know exactly what's wrong and exactly how to fix it. The lawyer spoke up. "Mrs. Harrison, what are your requirements?" I opened my laptop and pulled up a document I had prepared. "First, I want 51% equity in TechFlow Solutions, majority ownership." Derek stood up. "What?" "That's impossible. That would give you control of the entire company." "Sit down, Derek," I said calmly. "You built this company on my code. Without me, you have nothing, as you're currently experiencing." The lawyer put a hand on Derek's arm, and he sat back down, his face red. "She has a point," the lawyer said quietly. "Second," I continued, "I become CEO. Derek steps down to an advisory role." "This is my company," Derek said through clenched teeth. I looked him in the eye. "No, this is my company. You just put your name on it and took credit for 5 years. That ends today." "Third," I said, turning to Amber, "Ms. Stevens is terminated immediately, with no severance beyond what's legally required." Amber finally spoke. "You can't do this. Derek promised me—" "Derek promises a lot of things he doesn't deliver on," I interrupted. "You'll learn that the hard way like I did, but you won't be learning it here. Fourth, Derek will issue a public statement posted on LinkedIn, the company blog, and sent to all employees and investors. This statement will acknowledge that I designed and built the entire TechFlow platform, that the technical innovation everyone has praised was my work, not his." Derek was gripping the edge of the table. "You're humiliating me." "No," I said. "I'm telling the truth. Something you should have done 5 years ago." Fifth, I keep the house. Derek moves out by the end of the week. Sixth, I have full and final control over all technical decisions. No oversight, no interference. If you question my technical judgment again, I walk and I take my code with me." The lawyer was writing furiously. "These terms are quite aggressive, Mrs. Harrison." "These terms are fair," I said. "Derek took everything from me. My work, my marriage, my dignity. I'm taking back what's mine and nothing more." Derek looked at the financial reports his assistant had brought in. Another 3 clients had canceled this morning. The company's value had dropped to $4 million. At this rate, they would be bankrupt in 2 months. He looked at Amber, who was sitting there with tears in her eyes, realizing everything she thought she had won was slipping away. Then he looked back at me. "If I agree to all of this, you'll fix the system right now, today." "Immediately," I said. "I give you my word." Derek closed his eyes. "Fine. I agree." "I need it in writing," I said. "All of it. Right now." The lawyer spent the next hour drafting the contract. Every point I had demanded spelled out in legal language. Derek signed it, his hand shaking slightly. Then I signed it. It was done. Amber stood up her chair, scraping loudly against the floor. "Derek, you promised me we would be together. You said once she was gone." Derek didn't look at her. "I'm sorry, Amber, but I can't lose everything." She stared at him, disbelief and fury mixing on her face. Then she turned to me. "You're a vindictive bitch," she spat. I stood up calmly. "No, I'm a software engineer who protected her work. You tried to steal what I built. This is the consequence." Amber grabbed her purse and stormed out of the conference room. We heard the main door slam a moment later. She was gone. I didn't spare her another thought. I walked to what used to be my office, the one they had given to Amber last week. My old coffee mug was still there, shoved in a drawer. I set up my laptop on the desk and logged into the back-end system. Derek and several developers gathered around watching. I pulled up the authentication module and navigated to the section where I had buried the kill switch. It was still there exactly as I had left it, invisible unless you knew where to look. I typed a single command. "Kill switch deactivated." I hit enter. For 5 seconds, nothing happened. Then the monitoring dashboard started lighting up green, systems coming back online. Authentication protocols restored. API calls succeeding. Database connections stabilizing. James, who had been hovering near the door, checked his terminal. "Everything's back," he said, his voice filled with awe. "All systems are operational." The other developers started cheering. Some of them were crying. They had been working nonstop for 3 days trying to fix something they didn't understand. Derek just stared at the screen, then at me. "You did this on purpose," he said quietly. I looked at him. "I built a protection mechanism when I created this system, a failsafe that would activate if I was ever removed. I never thought I would need to use it against my own husband, but you left me no choice." "You could have destroyed the company," he said. "I could have—" I agreed. But I didn't. I just reclaimed what was mine. I called an all-hands meeting for 4 o'clock. Every employee gathered in the main area. I stood at the front with Derek sitting in the audience like everyone else. "I want to start by thanking all of you for your patience during this difficult week," I began. "I know it's been stressful. Effective immediately, I'm resuming my role as CTO, and I'm also taking on the position of CEO of TechFlow Solutions." There was a moment of silence, then James started clapping, then Sarah, then the entire development team. The applause built until nearly everyone in the room was clapping. "Derek will be transitioning to an advisory role," I continued. "I want to be clear about something. The technical challenges we faced this week happened because I am the only person who fully understands this system. I built it from the ground up, and I'm the only one who can maintain it at this level. Moving forward, we're going to rebuild trust with our clients. I'll be personally reaching out to every affected customer. We're going to offer compensation for the downtime and discounts on future services. And I promise you nothing like this will ever happen again." The room was silent now, everyone listening. "I also want to address company culture," I said. "This company will operate on principles of transparency, fairness, and merit. Your contributions will be recognized. Your expertise will be valued, and anyone who tries to take credit for work that isn't theirs will be shown the door." More applause. I saw several people wiping their eyes. They had been watching this dysfunction for weeks, powerless to stop it. Now things were going to change. After the meeting, employees came up to me one by one. "Thank you," Sarah said. "This is how it should have been from the start." James hugged me. "Welcome back, boss." Derek left early that day. He didn't say goodbye to anyone. He just packed up his personal items and walked out. I watched him go and felt nothing. The man I had loved was gone, had maybe never existed. This was just a stranger who happened to share my last name, at least for a little while longer. 6 months have passed since that day. TechFlow is thriving now better than it ever was. I spent the first month personally calling every client we had lost. I apologized, explained what had happened without going into personal details, and offered them incentives to return. Most of them did. They had liked our platform when it worked. They just needed to trust that it would keep working. I restructured the company completely, hired 3 more senior engineers, all incredibly talented, promoted James to VP of Engineering. He deserved it. I implemented proper documentation practices, code reviews, security audits, everything that should have been in place from the beginning, but that I had been too busy building to establish. The company culture is different now. People actually want to work here. We have transparency in decision-making. We have fair compensation structures. We have a clear path for advancement based on merit, not on who you know or who you're sleeping with. Revenue has recovered and exceeded where we were before the crisis. We're at 6.5 million now and growing steadily. I secured additional funding from new investors who believe in the direction I'm taking the company. TechFlow is valued at $9 million, now higher than it ever was under Derek's leadership. Derek still technically works here, though he comes in maybe once a week. He has an office in the back that he rarely uses. He gets a modest salary for his advisory role, but he has no real power anymore. No authority to make decisions. He's a ghost in the company he used to run. The divorce was finalized 3 months ago. I kept the house as stipulated in the contract. Derek moved into a small apartment downtown. I heard through office gossip that Amber left him about a month after everything went down. Apparently, she lost interest once he didn't have money or power anymore. Who could have seen that coming? Derek texted me one night about 2 months after I took over. It was late, probably after he'd been drinking. I'm sorry for everything. I was an idiot. You deserved better. I threw away the best thing in my life for nothing. I read the message and then set my phone down. I didn't reply. Not out of anger, but because his apology couldn't change anything. It couldn't give me back the 5 years I spent building something for us only to have him try to steal it. It couldn't undo the betrayal or the lies or the humiliation. His apology was about him feeling better, not about me healing. And I didn't need it to heal. I was doing that on my own. My life now is full in ways it never was before. I speak at technology conferences sharing my story about intellectual property protection and the importance of women in tech maintaining control of their work. I'm always careful about how I tell it. I don't name names or share private details. But the message is clear. Protect what you build. I mentor young female engineers now. I tell them things I wish someone had told me. Document everything. Keep backups of your work. Make sure your contributions are visible and credited. Never make yourself small for someone else's ego. Trust, but verify. Love, but protect yourself. I haven't dated anyone since the divorce. I'm not ready, and honestly, I'm not sure I want to be. I'm happy being single, being in control of my own life, making my own decisions without having to consider someone else's agenda. Maybe someday I'll be open to a relationship again, but right now I'm exactly where I need to be. Last week I was invited to give a keynote speech at a Women in Tech Summit. I stood on that stage in front of 500 people and told a version of my story. When I finished, I got a standing ovation. Afterwards, dozens of women came up to me with their own stories, husbands who took credit for their work, partners who undermined them, bosses who stole their ideas. One woman, probably in her mid-40s, grabbed my hand. "Thank you," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I've been letting my business partner take credit for the software I built for 3 years. I thought I had to keep the peace. But after hearing you, I'm going to document everything and demand proper attribution." That moment made everything worth it. The pain, the betrayal, the fight to take back what was mine. If my story could help even one person protect themselves, then it all meant something. People ask me sometimes if I regret the kill switch, if I feel bad about nearly destroying the company. The answer is no. That kill switch wasn't about revenge, though. I won't lie and say revenge didn't feel good. It was about protection. It was about making sure that if someone tried to take what I built, they would understand exactly what they were taking. Derek thought I was just a programmer who would quietly accept being pushed aside. He thought because I was kind and patient and preferred working in the background, I was weak. He confused kindness with weakness, and that was his mistake. I learned something important through all of this. There's a difference between being kind and being a doormat, being generous and being exploited, trusting someone and being naive. I can be all those good things while still protecting myself, while still demanding what I'm owed, while still fighting back when someone tries to take advantage. The $8 million empire didn't actually get destroyed. That's not quite accurate. It got reclaimed. It got taken back by the person who built it in the first place. And under my leadership, it's become a $9 million empire. Soon it'll be 10 million, then 20, then more. Derek's name might have been on the door for 5 years, but it was always my company, my code, my creation. He just didn't realize that until it was too late. I still have that kill switch in the code, by the way, updated and improved. Call it insurance, call it a reminder, call it whatever you want. But it's there buried deep where no one but me can find it, because I'll never let anyone take what I've built again. Sometimes late at night when I'm alone in my house, I think about that moment when I activated the timer. 72 hours until everything Derek had taken from me would start crumbling. It was the scariest decision I've ever made, but it was also the moment I took my power back, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. So let me leave you with this. If you're building something valuable with someone else, protect your work. Document everything you create. Keep your own backups. Make sure your contributions are visible and credited. Know your worth, and don't let anyone convince you that you're worth less than you are. And remember, the person who builds the foundation holds the real power, no matter whose name is on the door, no matter who stands in the spotlight. The real power belongs to the person who knows how everything works, who understands every line of code, who can make it all work or make it all stop. That power is something no one can take from you, unless you let them. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had someone try to take credit for your work? How did you handle it? Drop your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and your experiences matter. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button. It helps other people find this video and maybe help someone who needs to hear this message right now. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. I share stories like this every week, stories about people who faced injustice and found their way through it. Stories about taking back your power. And share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe you know someone going through something similar. Maybe someone in your life needs the reminder that they're stronger than they think. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope wherever you are, whatever you're facing, you remember that you have more power than you realize. You just have to be brave enough to use it. Take care of yourselves. Protect your work. Know your worth. And never ever let anyone make you feel small. Until next time.